Matt Lenihan Boxing Social in association with Empire Fight Store and Our Kings. Dave Coldwell, always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us on Sunday. There's been obviously boxing over the weekend. We've seen from Australia. Let's just sort of get the. And I want to start somewhere else actually. Yesterday was quite a sad day for the sport of boxing. The passing of George Foreman, and also on the back of that later in the evening, we learned the passing of sort of a legend in the sport of boxing from the journalist's point of view in Colin Hart. A sad day. Start with George. Just what are your sort of memories? Have you ever sort of come in contact with him, had time to speak to the man? I mean, unfortunately, I've never had the chance to engage with him over interview. But what was your sort of memories of George?
Well, I did. Thankfully, due to Prince Nassim Hamid, when we was out in, I think it was Atlantic City, Naz introduced me to George Foreman, and it was just, you know, mind blowing meeting somebody. He's got such an aura about him, such a
Mm.
great aura about him. A real gentleman, big smile. Obviously, from his fighting career, I remember the comeback, and obviously you knew about it, the age, how he went away, became a preacher, retired, became a preacher, and then he comes back and makes this improbable comeback that, you know, I think he got beat by Holyfield, and you kind of thought then that's that's the end of it. It was a great comeback. He gave it a great go, but it's not really going to go the way that the fairy tale ending. But I remember the fight with Michael Mora, and I remember when Mora went down, you're looking at me thinking he's not going to get up, and he becomes heavyweight champion at 45 or something like that, and just an incredible story. But a lot of fans will remember him more so from the HBO analysis and commentaries and comments. And he was always colourful, always great. Like I said, to me, it was an absolute honour. And one of those where it comes to his passing, and you wake up and you see the news, and you're actually gutted, because he was somebody that I don't know anybody that spoke badly about him.
No.
He was a true gent, and a great figure of the fight game, really. So yeah, it's a very, very sad day. But I'll tell you what, if people haven't seen it, I watched a couple of months ago. I saw the George Foreman story, the film,
Yeah.
and I didn't know quite a lot of those sort of details that are in the film, and it's a really good film. You just, for the respect that you've got for him, for what you know on the surface, to then to understand and to understand his actual story, it takes it to another level.
I was unfortunate to never meet the man, but when you look at some of the fight highlights, and you know yourself, when we talk about big punchers like the modern day sort of
Yeah,
heavyweights, everyone was waxing lyrical about Deontay Wilder, and rightly so, and got all these big punchers, and anyone over that weight class hits. But when you watch his highlights, he just seemed to touch you and
yeah,
crumble you,
yeah.
and he carried that natural power. What must that have been like, knowing you're facing a guy who's just these thudding shots?
Well, I put a clip up on my reels that I'd seen on Instagram. Just shared it to my story yesterday, and I think it was highlights of, I think it was a Ron Lyle fight. Mate, it's just brutality. Different levels of those days. I mean, fights went on, and these guys were seriously tough, and they weren't as protected as what they are these days. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but it's just the situation and how boxing was back then. And when you saw, Foreman throwing his punches, it was brute strength, brute force, blunt objects, and it was, he had some sort of crazy power. And everybody throughout history, they all talk about him. The people that are around at his era, they all talk about him being one of the most phenomenal punchers that there's ever been in the sport. So, who are we to argue?
Yeah.
People like to compare modern day fighters with olden fighters. It's a different sport, different. A lot, like I said, allowing fights to go longer, different level of toughness, and yeah, he's generally up there with one of the hardest punchers in boxing.
And obviously, I mentioned at the start of that, Colin Hart, someone who I'd spoke to sort of briefly on the media circuit. He was always a presence that was there, close fights near, far, and everywhere, even at that age, and longevity in the game. And he's wrote about absolutely everyone as well. It's a sad day yesterday.
Yeah, same. With Colin, I've seen and been around and spoke to Colin many, many times over the years. Again, he's somebody that I got to know first when I first got into boxing, and then really as Naz started getting bigger and bigger, Colin was always at the fights. He'd come to the gym. Obviously you see him at media days, press conferences, and then as the years have gone by, I still keep seeing him. I saw him last time I saw him was a couple of months ago. But yeah, I didn't actually realize that. I think he'd been fighting illness for a while. I didn't realize that. Obviously, somebody at that sort of age, it's just been around forever.
Yeah,
He had an unbelievable career. Very forthright with his views. Not afraid to rub people up the wrong way. And say how he saw it really. And that was, like I said, he's covered everything. And he's one of the. There's not many old school boxing journalists
yeah.
left or around. So yeah, it is a sad day, when you're saying goodbye to one of the few that's left.
Absolutely. Um, just sort of moving through the other boxing news before we talk about Australia and sort of what came from that. There was a few. There was one surprise, I think, on the card there, if people want to call it a surprise. But let's just address the Jake Paul comments just quickly. Um, yeah, I scratched my head a little bit because I actually admire Jake Paul a lot because the
Yeah,
fight with because and I say that from a point of view of the fight with Canelo, whether people like it or not, was actually pretty much done until a last minute intervention.
yeah.
So that was meant to be a thing, and I just think fair enough. Do you know what I mean? No one could say he's not tried it with a real with a legitimate fighter. But then I see the comments about Anthony Joshua, which is a legitimate heavyweight monster, former world champion 2 time, and when he says the stuff he says, and I know you've seen the comments.
Yeah.
What do you make of it? Because he's done a bit of trolling after with look he's on the phone and stuff like that. But when you see he was close with Canelo, and I think people maybe doubted when he said I will fight Canelo that he actually would, and it's proof that he was gonna. Do you think with AJ he's having a laugh? What do you think?
Jake Paul has been very, very clever. He's a very astute businessman. And in the world of views, social media, and self PR, he's an absolute genius, and I rate him. I really do. And I think he's somebody that, he's got ultra thick rhinoceros skin that he doesn't care what anybody has to
Mm-hmm.
say that's disparaging, that's negative. He doesn't care. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing for his life, and he'll just go with it. And you look at his life, look at the money he's earned, the profile, everything that he's wanted to do is ticked out. He's done it. He's done it. So when he's using these fight, people like us that are in the game, and you appreciate what he's doing. But at the same time, even though we are in the game, we do appreciate what he's doing. You understand on the marketing point of view, the realism side of you is like, shut up, you're talking rubbish, you know. But that's what he does. He's great at getting reactions and getting people saying, what? Shut up, man. Because listen, Anthony Joshua take his head clean off. It would be brutal. And the disrespect on AJ's name for some people out there that are saying he could beat him. Shut up. He's not beat a legitimate, proper professional fighter yet. So don't tell me that he's going to beat or has any chance of beating Anthony Joshua. You know, yeah, but he's putting his name into that space, and so then people, and in this world of boxing right now, you don't know what fight. Just remember, Conor McGregor fought Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah,
Anything goes in this game. Anything goes. If there's enough of that on the table, and enough of those that are going to watch it can happen. Um, I don't personally truly think that he's saying it seriously because there's one thing getting beat up, ground down, and beat by someone like Canelo, who isn't the biggest of fellas, right? Canelo still smash him to bits, but on a certain pain score, that's going to be far less painful, destructive, and life threatening than him getting beat up by Anthony Joshua.
Mm-hmm.
Because Joshua is a much more powerful, much bigger, much heavier, much stronger man than Canelo. People want to disrespect him, but he's been beat up. Oh, yeah, by proper fighters.
Yeah.
You know? And the disrespect on him because you look at the fighters that AJ's beaten, and then you're telling me that Jake Paul's got a chance. Jake Paul, what the one fighter, the one real fighter that he fought, one real boxer that he fought. What happened there? Would you give Tommy Fury a chance against Anthony Joshua?
Nope.
Do you know what I mean? So again, like I said, I think it's amazing PR, great. It's got him on everybody's vocal cords again. But in realistic terms, he better have one hell of an insurance policy for that if that ever happens.
I think Eddie Hearn said something similar, but when you see him call these people out, my thoughts are, I do fear for you a little bit in these fights. Even Canelo, I think,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah,
that's almost
yeah,
like a Canelo will dictate how bad this is for you.
yeah,
No
100%.
disrespect, no disrespect
And
to him.
Canelo is spiteful. He'll look at that and say, "Okay, I'll take your money, but you're for having the disrespect to think that you can even step in a ring with me. I'm going to make this painful." And Canelo torture him, and that's what's going to happen as a kid. And you think, on the one side, it's genius marketing, it's genius PR, unbelievable, fantastic, well done, Jake Paul. But the other side is you kind of also he's that good at selling himself. You actually think, do you actually believe what you're saying? Because if you do, you need to have a little chat with yourself because it's like it takes delusion of grandeur to such a higher level. But it's difficult because I've never met the guy. I don't. He must be intelligent. He must be so switched on for what he's done. But when it comes to this space, is he just that good a salesman that it's almost like you believe that he believes it?
I think, I think he does, and I honestly, from my perspective, not that it's worth much, I kind of respect it to a degree. But
Yeah,
like
that's what
you
I'm
said,
saying.
it's a delusion of grandeur on epic proportions, to be polite. But
Yeah,
the fact that the Canelo thing went up, I was like, fair play. As soon as he said that, because all this stuff about him getting a real fighter, the only reason that fight's been diverted is because Turki Al Sheikh stepped
yeah.
in and gave Canelo X amount of pennies to go and sign, I think, he on 4
But
fights.
but don't forget though, he goes in. So he's by going from the level he's boxing now to jumping up
Oh,
to the elite
it's
level,
crazy.
right? Yeah, it is, but it's also very clever because he's actually got nothing to lose. Because if he gets beat by Canelo, to his fans and people like that, they don't care. They'll be like, "Yeah, but at least he went 2 rounds, or he went, or at least he did it, or what." There's always at least he's testing himself at this level. He's got the ball to it. Doesn't matter if he just steps up a level or two, boxes a contender, a prospect, or whatever, and gets beat. That's where it's like the cards all fall down there
Yeah.
because then he really gets exposed. But by going in at such a astronomical level where it's like you've got nothing to lose there.
But that's why when Eddie Hearn says, I'll put you in with any fighter who's just had a few fights, and I think Chef Clark were getting mentioned, for instance,
Yeah,
what does he
that's
get
why
for
it
fighting
didn't go
Chef Clark?
nowhere.
What was he ever going to get for fighting Chef
Yeah,
Clark? Nothing. I think you see him against KSI maybe at one point, Jake Paul, whenever that sorted itself out in that space. But
yeah, that'd be
um,
great. I think that'd be a great event and great sort of fight at that sort of level.
do you do you separate them two? Boxing fans will be going mad, by the way. We are going to move on from this topic, but I just want to find out: do you look at KSI and Jake Paul in a different realm? Do you look at Jake Paul as in a, or do you see them in the same? Because I see some people saying Jake, I class him more as a, I don't know, he's kind of living the life, giving it a go.
Yeah, yeah. I think for KSI, this really is a bit of a side hustle. Um, whereas with you, I can't not, I can't do anything but respect Jake Paul for what he's done. Look at what he's done with the promotions company. Look at what he's done for like people like Amanda Serrano, and look at Serrano and Taylor, the purses that they're getting, the eyeballs that they're getting, the deal with Netflix. I rate him for what he's done there, and he actually does train. If he wasn't calling out the elite and thinking he's going to beat the elite, and if he actually just buckled down and said, you know what, I'm going to get myself a title shot, but I'm going to do this properly and take the steps that other fighters do.
Yeah.
It's another prospect, so you have to give him respect as another prospect, and so he would get more respect as a prospect coming up through the rankings. Not a problem at all because he does train hard. He is doing things properly from what I hear.
Mm-hmm.
So I rate him for that. It's just that he's wanting to skip the levels to go from nothing to the top.
To everything.
Whereas with KSI, I think you can see with KSI, he's just a side hustle. It's just he's doing all this. That I mean, he does everything, doesn't he? And then the boxing's kind of like once in a blue moon, and that's it. And that's what he wants to do. Listen, when you are that big in terms of presence, social media, finances that are coming in, and you command eyeballs like these two guys do, then really they can do whatever they want and whatever they choose to do. So you kind of just, they're doing what. If we all had an opportunity to do whatever we wanted,
yeah,
we'd all do different things, and we'd all do things that you might not agree with what I do. I might not agree with what you do, but it's what you want to do because you've got the power to live your life as what you choose. That's what these two have done, and to get to the point to where they are, they have grafted the bollocks off. So fair play to them.
Absolutely. The weekend saw George Kambosos pick up victory over a last-minute opponent, who now has a contract with Matchroom Boxing as of Monday, by all accounts, which is terrific. We're hearing now he will go straight into a world title fight with Richardson Hitchens. What do you make of that? I saw some comments online saying, how has George managed to get himself in a position where he's lost X amount of fights in that position and now he's all of a sudden he can fight for a world title? Like, what do you make of that?
Boxing. If you are worth something as a commodity to the promoter, you'll get maneuvered into a shot. It's always been the same. It's always been the same. You can go right back when and talk about what if I'm wrong. How many fights did Leon Spinks have when he become heavyweight champion? Or when he beat Muhammad Ali. It's always been, if you get the opportunity, you're not going to turn it down, are you?
No.
And so if you have losses and you stick at it and you come back, you can get a win, just to get a ranking fight, get yourself in. You get into that break into that top 15. There you go. You can be made as a voluntary. That's how it is.
Does this give, when we see the new league that's coming, the Dana White stuff, and people say boxing is broken, when you look at his last 5 fights, so 2 Devin Haney defeats. So there's no shame in these defeats, by the way. When I say this, he's beaten Teofimo Lopez in the midst of all this, and Lee Selby, Mickey Bays, but he's only lost at that elite level. So 2 Devin Haney defeats, a win over Maxi Hughes. I say that lightly because
because he didn't. Yeah,
99.9% of people I spoke to are there and otherwise said he didn't. He's not mentioned his name as well in the build-up to this. I think that's annoying, Maxi, but I've seen that. And then he lost to Vasily Lomachenko. Fair enough. No one begrudges him. I think in terms of business, he's one of the cleverest in the sport with what he's done and set himself up. And then last-minute opponent, obviously, Jake Wiley gets the victory. Would that give sort of ammunition for your Dana Whites and stuff to say, well, boxing is broken because now he's fighting for the championship of the world?
No, not necessarily. Well, yes, but no, because you can say that, but like I said, it's in the UFC. I don't watch UFC, but I believe fighters can get beat in that, and they don't. It's how did they perform? Was it for a good fight? They put up a good fight. They get another opportunity. So you can't have it both ways. Where you say, as soon as you've got beat, that's it. You cast aside, and then say, well, you should be able to. But I think the frustrating thing is that he's not got a win on his record since his losses that earns him a shot.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the fact that he's been beat recently by Devin Haney and Lomachenko and what have you, and should have got beat by Max Hughes. It's not a case of that. It's the case that this win doesn't qualify for a world title fight.
Yeah.
But if it's a voluntary defense and if you're in that ranking, you can get a shot. It's always been the same. It's always been the same.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't be too harsh on it, because there's fighters out there that turn out to be very good champions that have had shots where at the time you think, well, they don't deserve that title shot, but they go out there and they grab it, be given an opportunity, grab it, and then they go on to become good world champions, established world champions. It's not a case that doesn't mean that boxing is broken. I think there's far worse things that are going off in the sport that lend an argument towards Dana White and that saying that boxing's broken. But I don't think it's not a case that it's broken. I think right now boxing's getting in a better headspace because we're getting good fights. And I'm back walking on the streets and people, casual fans, people aren't boxing fans, are talking to me about boxing again.
Yes. Yeah.
Now that tells you that boxing's in a better place than what it was a couple of years ago, where people didn't know there was a fight, in the local. I'm talking big arena, in the local arena. I remember, go back a couple of years back, we was down in London, and where the Intercontinental Hotel is, and O2, and we're
Next
on that
door.
walk in between, and somebody said, "Oh, what are you doing down here?" I was like, "I got a fight on." "Oh, where at?" I'm like, "There." "When?" "Tomorrow." And they're in that space. Boxing's moved back out of that now, where people know there's big, because it's back out there. Big fights are getting made, and people are talking to me about. They know, like Parker's, Dubois, and Hamza Shiraz, and people know about fighters again now. It's getting that way. It's not where we want it to be, but it's all part of the process. So I do think it's in a better spot, but still a lot of work to be done. And there's no easy fix. It's sport. There's no easy fix. You can look into football. Is football broken because they brought in VAR, and then VAR's just caused there isn't a game that goes by without people slagging off ref decisions, VAR decisions. So is football broken? Every sport is going to be broken unless it's done the exact way that everybody wants it to be.
Yeah,
and it's never going to be that way.
I have to admit, boxing's in as good a place as I've ever known it, and the short period that I've been in it, I think it's incredible. Like
well, just look at it this way, right? Not too long ago, people were complaining because fights weren't happening because promoters won't speak to each other. Never mind sit down and face to face; they won't speak to each other. Now you've got shows where on the top table at press conferences,
they're all there.
You've got like a dozen promoters that come together to make a show work. You've got the guys that have hated each other for years and years and years now working together and realizing actually we can work together. We can get business done. And you're not as big a twat as what I thought you were. And now they're getting on. But that's pushed the sport so far in front because we're getting fights made, because there's conversation, there's relationships, cross promoting. Oscar De La Hoya slagging off what was happening in Saudi. Next minute, he's now involved. So we're in a good spot. So we've got the spot we're in. We've got the potential to have a real golden age for the sport. Mm-hmm. We've got the potential. Now, everybody's in this alignment. Just don't fuck it up. Be honest. Don't try stabbing anybody back and pulling strokes on each other. Just play the game to keep the sport progressing, and then everybody's going to have a bigger piece of the pie, because the pie is just going to grow, get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, agree. Did you see the Skye Nicolson fight at all? And what did you make of it? Tiara Brown heard a lot about her beforehand, seen some clips. She looked like she was gonna give it all she could, and on the night she did. A lot of people saying they thought Skye had nicked it, but they couldn't argue either way. And we have a new
I'll
world champion.
I'll be honest with you. I wasn't gonna watch it, but then obviously when I heard that she got beat, I was like, oh, okay, I'll watch this. What's happened there then? And it was I don't. Whenever I've seen Skybox before, her feet are fantastic, and she doesn't engage at all, and she just boxes, boxes, boxes. She doesn't care what anybody says. She's not the most exciting fighter, but
She wins.
boxing, boxing talent wise, she's far ahead of everybody that she's boxed, and she's like where you look at it, you think he's going to take some fighter to beat her, or somebody that can drag her into a fight that's got good enough feet to combat her movement. Right from round one, really, round one, round two, she held her feet longer. And I was like, oh, okay, this is different. And I don't know whether it's a case of I don't know the girl, so I don't know whether
Yeah.
it's ego where everybody's telling you this. You call yourself undisputed, and you're saying you're talking about yourself going to be undisputed all the time, even before she won a world title. I think I don't know whether it gets you where you think, okay, now I'm champ. I'm better than what I even thought I was going to be. Now I can start standing there and start banging people. You've got one knockout on your record. You're not a banger. You are what you are. But I thought she stood there wanting to have a bit of a fight more. And this girl that's in front of her, I don't think she could have competed. No, she could have. Sorry, that's the wrong word. She could have competed, obviously, but I don't think she would have beaten her if Skye had just been a usual style, which would have been a stinker, would have been a crap. But it was a bit of a stinker anyway because it was sort of all the holding and grappling and stuff like that anyway. So it was a stinker of a fight anyway, in my opinion. I'm not saying everybody thinks that way, but it was a bit of a stinker where she's holding and scrappy and that kind of fight. But she fought Brown's fight.
Yeah.
And it was still a close fight. It was still very, very close. So if she'd have just gone to a normal Skye Nicolson pop move, then I think she'd have beaten her. And I think she'll probably be kicking herself today, thinking I should have just boxed my normal self. But sometimes, like I said, hype machine gets going and you start thinking you're something that what you're not.
I think I look and sometimes think boxing's it can almost play with your mind and be a double-edged sword. So you've got someone like her who I look and see these long levers, you could jab everyone's head off and move till your heart's content. But when you're hearing the noise of, oh, we want you to start engaging and you're back home, you're in Australia, so maybe you think, oh, you know what, I may be obliged to put on a little bit of a show. But there's that balance between, well, look, your percentages to win this fight sort of grow smaller if you try and do that, or you can do what you always do. So you don't know. And Tiara Brown has been the only opponent really to speak to her the way she has. And I looked and thought she's coming for all this. Like she'll leave everything in the ring.
Matt, 100%. You banged it right on the nail there. You're under this pressure because it's not these days. It's not good enough just to go in there and box and win a fight on points and just box away, get the W. Remember, Bernard Hopkins did not give a shit. He would make the fight a stinker just to win, and his attitude was keep winning. I get my money, I get my titles, keep on going.
Yeah,
and you got to do what you got to do to win. But like you said, they're all under this pressure now. Whether it's a prospect or whether it's a champion, it's not good enough to be a champion now. You've got to be an exciting champion. You've got to be exciting that everybody wants to watch.
Mm-hmm.
There is that pressure, and I can understand that Skye's probably looked at that, like you say, back in her home country. There's a lot of pressure when you go back home. She's been away, she's won a title, she's come back, big homecoming. Probably wants to make it a bit more of an exciting fight, and it's backfired on her. And this is the thing where people like Bernard Hopkins, people like Floyd Mayweather, even I'm not talking about on the same level ability-wise, but I'm talking about the mentalities of them. They would not give a shit. You could say, there will be people that will want to watch your style of boxing. There are people that want to watch boxing, and there are technical boxing, and there are people that want to watch tear up. The problem is the people that just want to watch the boxing is a much smaller pool than the people that want to see an exciting fight, a tear up, exchanges, and that's what promoters are looking at. They're looking at the bigger pool, so it's very, very difficult for fighters.
I know we're limited, but I just want to get this in. So, like when you look at the styles, use a Shakur Stevenson. I'm not putting them in the same realm, by the way. I'm just saying you get people like, oh, tap tap, run, move about. I think he's actually a lot more than that. I think he's a very special talent. But for the flip side to that, Shakur's got that personality where it's like kind of, and he's slowly coming out a bit more of, I don't care, I'm winning. You tune in to watch me get beat. So if you're going to fight like that, does the flip side of your, and I'm not saying it's not for everybody, but does your persona have to be that of Marmite where, oh, we love you for your boxing skills, we're going to tune in to watch you, or we hate you that much, we want to see you lose? Do you have to have that sort of that flip side where people watch Floyd to the latter end of his career, forgetting the fact he was actually a killer up till the fact he moved into 147. I think he had an 80% knockout ratio. But anyway, do you have to have that sort of personality where, we're going to tune in just to see you lose kind of thing? Or
there's got to, if you're not the most exciting of styles, you've got to have a hook why people are going to watch you.
Yeah.
Why the masses are going to watch you. Because at the end of the day, everything's on views, on numbers, on figures that drives up your money, gives you this prime time slots. So you've got to have something about you. And whether that's the brashness, the mouth, ring entrances, whatever it is, whatever it might be, and whether people want to see you get smashed to bits, somebody to catch up on you, give you a lesson, beat you up, or they appreciate that skill or that personality, that you just need them to watch. And that's where we're at. And you were saying about Floyd Mayweather. I watched the DeMarcus Coley fight last night. Mate, people forget the guy was. I said to the lads, people forget he was a beast. He was a beast.
Yeah.
Until he moved up the weights, he was like, okay, well, my hands are bad, and these guys are bigger. I'm just going to stick. Then he just stuck to boxing. But before that, mate, he'd get hurt and he'd fire back. The guy had balls and he was tough. But people don't remember him for that. They only remember him for his skills and his defense. That's when you talk about Floyd Mayweather, that's all you talk about, his skills and his defense. Nobody talks about the early part of his career. I mean, the Coley fight, I think that was about his 13th defense or something like that. So he was an established world champion, a pound for pounder, but he was exciting back then.
Even when you look at, I'll use an Arturo Gatti, for example. I mean, people will say what they want about him, but he's a legendary fighter, whether you don't think he's got the elite skills of X, Y, and Z, but he's a dog. And if you're not on your game, he'll smash you to pieces. And Floyd went to his backyard and absolutely walloped him for however long it lasted. And that was as brutal a performance as you'll see of someone taking punishment. So it's easy to forget about that. But because his persona was always nobody can touch me, and that's when we sort of moved into not the social media era, but we were getting closer to it, and it was built off clicks and this, that, and the other. Yeah. That's what you see. So I think when people say, oh, he was one of the best defensive fighters of all time, I think he almost sits there sometimes and goes, I've got over 50% knockouts on my record. It's madness.
Yeah.
What a fighter. Anyway, Dave, I appreciate you jumping on. We've chopped it up a little bit there. We will catch up soon. Just quickly, next week, we've got 5 minutes left on this, so it has to be quick. Sandy Ryan, Michaela Mayer, the rematch. What do you think?
I don't know. Good. The first one was a good fight. It was a really good fight.
Belting fight.
Really good fight. One of the best female fights I've seen. And this one's gone on the radar. It's not really been spoke about, and it's next week. But it's definitely going to be a great fight. I don't know. I think Sandy's got to go in there and not be too tense. Not be, I think maybe she got let emotions get involved last time with the whole paint throwing and things like that. She's got to be more fluid in what she does in there. But I think it's going to be another really good fight. Hope she pulls it off.
Yeah, top fight, live from Las Vegas. We will have content all week for it from Tuesday onwards. Dave, top man for jumping on. We will catch up soon.
Nice one, mate. Cheers.